On the surface, Raven Ridge National Park looked like any other beautiful stretch of wilderness. Tens of thousands of visitors came every year for the sweeping views, the jagged cliffs, and the long spiderweb of hiking trails that twisted through thick evergreen forest. But over the years, locals had learned to say one thing about Raven Ridge with a nervous smile: the mountain keeps what it wants. This is the story of a young man who went up Raven Ridge for a quiet weekend hike and never came down. Part 1. The Park and the Hiker. 27-year-old Daniel Cole was not a reckless thrill seeker. He was the kind of guy who planned things, who checked weather reports twice, who texted his location to friends when he traveled. He worked a quiet office job in the city, lived alone, and spent most of his free time watching hiking videos, reading trail reports, and saving money for bigger adventures. Raven Ridge had been on his list for a while. It was famous online for its Skyline Loop, a 2-day hike that climbed from dense forest up to an exposed ridge with a panoramic view of the valley. Blog posts called it challenging but rewarding, lonely but safe if you're prepared. On Friday afternoon, Daniel texted his older sister, "Heading to Raven Ridge for the weekend. Trailhead at North Lot. Back by Sunday night. I'll send pics." She replied with a thumbs up and a simple reminder: "Stay on the trail, Danny." He left before sunrise on Saturday in his old silver hatchback, a carefully packed backpack in the trunk, a tent, sleeping bag, dehydrated meals, water filter, first aid kit, and, according to his friends, a brand new neon orange jacket he'd bought specifically so nobody could miss me if I fall off a cliff. He joked about it in their group chat. Nobody laughed at that joke later. Security cameras at a gas station near the park showed Daniel around 7:47 a.m., buying a coffee, 2 energy bars, and a paper map of the national park. He looks calm, focused, excited. This would be his first solo overnight hike in a national park. It was also, as far as anyone can tell, the last time he was ever captured on a clear camera. Part 2. The Hike. The North Lot trailhead sits at the end of a narrow, cracked road lined with towering pines. Rangers later confirmed that Daniel's car entered the park at 8:13 a.m. A motion-activated camera at the lot caught him stepping out of the car, putting on his backpack, and taking a photo of the trailhead sign with his phone. He then disappeared into the trees. The first section of the Skyline Loop is deceptively calm. Wide paths, bird song, the distant rush of a hidden river. That morning, the weather was cold but clear, with a thin mist lifting off the forest floor. Other hikers recalled that the air felt still, heavier than usual, like the woods were holding their breath. Around 10 a.m., a couple in their 40s saw a man matching Daniel's description near mile marker 3. He stepped aside politely to let them pass, nodded, and asked how far they'd gone. They chatted briefly about the view at the top of the ridge. They later described him as friendly, prepared, not in a hurry. Just after that, the trail begins to narrow and climb. The trees grow closer together, blocking out much of the sunlight. The soil turns to loose rock, and the forest goes quiet in that particular way that makes every footstep sound louder than it should. A group of 3 college students said they passed a solo hiker between miles 5 and 6, standing off to the side, looking at something on the ground. They noticed his neon orange jacket. One of them remembered thinking, "That's smart. If he gets lost, they'll find him easy." When police later asked if he seemed upset or nervous, they all said the same thing. No, just focused, like he was trying to figure something out. What he was looking at has never been definitively established. As the day wore on, clouds rolled in over the ridge. Temperatures dropped faster than expected. The park weather station recorded a sudden shift in wind speed shortly after 2 p.m., and a light drizzle began. Hikers later reported that the forest felt darker than it should at that hour. Shadows stretching longer, the air colder, and the usual sounds of wildlife strangely muted. Around 2:30 p.m., a lone female hiker coming down from the ridge claimed she saw two men standing just off the main trail near mile marker 7. They were both wearing dark clothing and no visible backpacks, which she thought was odd for that area. One of them looked away when she glanced in their direction. She turned her pace up slightly and kept going. When asked later if one of them could have been Daniel, she was sure. No, these guys were together, and they weren't dressed for hiking. Rangers have never publicly confirmed whether they identified those two men. Part 3. The disappearance. Daniel was supposed to be back home by Sunday evening. When his sister didn't get a message from him by 9 p.m., she assumed he was driving or had bad reception. By midnight, she checked his location through a shared app and saw that his phone had been offline since Saturday afternoon. That wasn't like him. By 1:30 a.m., she called the park's non-emergency line and reported him overdue. By sunrise on Monday, rangers had located his car still parked at the north lot, locked, with his registration and some empty snack wrappers inside. Nobody had seen him leave. Search and rescue teams were dispatched that morning. They started with the Skyline Loop, fanning out in both directions, calling his name into the mist-covered forest. Dogs picked up a scent near mile marker 3 where the couple had seen him on Saturday and followed it along the trail. So far, everything tracked with the accounts from other hikers. Then, around mile marker 6, things became strange. Just off the trail, searchers found a small clearing where the fallen leaves looked disturbed, like there had been a struggle or at least heavy movement. In the middle of the cleared ground lay a single torn strap from a backpack, same brand and color as Daniel's. Nearby, one of the dogs alerted on a broken branch that had what looked like a faint smear of dried blood. Testing later confirmed it matched Daniel's DNA. And yet there were no obvious signs of a fall, no cliff edge, no stream deep enough to sweep someone away, just trees. About 20 meters deeper into the woods, a ranger found something else, a section of tree bark carved with a crude symbol, freshly cut. It was a simple circle with 3 lines radiating outward like a broken sun. Above it, pressed into the damp bark, were the faint outlines of a handprint. Other trees in that immediate area had similar markings, some circles, some intersecting lines that almost resembled runes or letters. They were low on the trunks, at about chest height, cut recently enough that the wood underneath was still pale and raw. The search team flagged the area for investigators. Further along, at roughly mile marker 7, they made the most disturbing discovery. Daniel's neon orange jacket, folded almost neatly over a fallen log. It wasn't snagged on a branch or torn as if it had been ripped off in a panic. It was placed there. Inside the pocket were his car keys and a half-eaten protein bar. No phone. The dogs lost his scent not far from where the jacket was found. There were boot prints, likely his, leading from the trail into the woods, and then they simply stopped in a patch of disturbed soil that offered no clear direction, as if he had spun around in confusion or been dragged but somehow left no clean track. Over the next several days, over 50 people joined the search, rangers, volunteers, and specialized search teams. Helicopters scanned the ridge, drones flew over ravines, and thermal cameras swept the forest canopy at night. They found more odd details, but no Daniel. A pair of footprints in mud that seemed to follow his trail from behind for at least half a mile. Cigarette butts in a place where smoking is strictly prohibited, and where no campsites or official rest areas exist. A partially burnt campfire circle containing a bone fragment that luckily turned out to be from an animal, but no phone, no backpack, no body. Authorities eventually had to suspend the active search. His family hesitated to accept the word dead because nothing definitive had been found. Legally, he would be considered a missing person. Emotionally, his sister said, it felt worse than a confirmed death. It's like he's trapped somewhere between being here and being gone, and we're stuck there with him. Part 4. The Theories. Without a body, and with only these unsettling clues, the disappearance of Daniel Cole on Raven Ridge quickly grew into a magnet for theories. Online forums, hiking groups, and true crime communities started picking apart every detail released by the investigators. Several main theories emerged. The predator on the trail. One of the earliest theories was simple and chilling. Someone was hunting hikers in Raven Ridge. The unexplained footprints behind Daniel's, the cigarette butts in a no-smoking zone, and the two men in dark clothing seen by the female hiker near mile marker 7 all point to the possibility of a human threat on the mountain. What if Daniel wasn't just unlucky? What if he was followed? According to this theory, someone spotted him hiking alone, noticed his careful nature and predictable pace, and decided he'd be an easy target. They might have led him off the trail with a trick, calling for help, pretending to be injured, or leaving something that made him pause and investigate. The disturbed clearing near mile marker 6, the torn backpack strap, and the small amount of blood suggest an encounter that turned violent. The jacket neatly folded on the log could be the signature of a killer, or a taunt, a way of saying, "I was here, I had time to do this." If this theory is correct, the symbols carved in the trees might be markers used by the attacker, signs to themselves or to others indicating a path, a meeting point, or even previous incidents. Rangers have quietly admitted that the symbols were not part of any known park or logging codes. Officially, no known serial predator has been linked to Raven Ridge. Unofficially, many locals refuse to hike the Skyline Loop alone anymore. The familiar stranger. Another theory looks inward, not at random predators, but at the people closest to Daniel. He posted regularly in hiking forums, sometimes sharing his upcoming plans. In the weeks before the trip, he mentioned Raven Ridge more than once and even shared the planned date and route in one public thread. Anyone reading that forum would know he'd likely be alone on a specific weekend on a specific trail. What if the person who met him on that mountain wasn't a complete stranger? What if they'd chatted before online about gear, about routes, about finally meeting up for a hike sometime? Someone could have gained his trust over weeks or months, all through a screen. They could have suggested subtle changes to his plan. Take the ridge clockwise, it's less crowded. There's a cool viewpoint just off the main trail, no one knows about it. Those strange symbols on the trees could be part of a private code, something they used to mark their secret cool spots. Only for Daniel, the final spot was one he never left. This theory becomes even darker when you consider that investigators never recovered his phone. What messages were on it? Who had he been talking to in the weeks leading up to the hike? Some of that information remains sealed, pending investigation. The ritual in the woods. For some, the tree carvings were the key. The circle with 3 lines, the repeated patterns, the deliberate placement on multiple trunks. It didn't look random. And it didn't match any official markings used by the park. Some Redditors and amateur sleuths connected the symbol to scattered reports from other regions of small, secretive groups performing nature rituals or pseudo-occult gatherings in remote areas. Evidence is patchy and often exaggerated, but there are real documented cases of animals found arranged in specific patterns, campfire rings surrounded by symbols,
and anonymous online posts inviting people to step into the circle in the forest. According to this theory, Daniel may have stumbled onto something he wasn't supposed to see. Maybe he followed voices off the trail, chanting, laughter, or the sound of music. Maybe he saw the carved trees and a hidden campsite and realized he wasn't alone. If the wrong people caught him watching, the situation could have escalated quickly. The neat placement of his jacket over the log, with his keys tucked safely inside, has an almost ritualistic feel in this interpretation, like an offering, or a way of stripping him of identity before whatever came next. It's a theory heavy on speculation, but the uncomfortable truth remains. Rangers have quietly confirmed that unauthorized campsites and unusual gatherings have occurred in remote corners of Raven Ridge before. Not often, but enough to make the theory harder to ignore. The mountain itself. The final theory is the one that people who loved Daniel hate the most, that the mountain didn't need a human villain at all. Maybe he slipped on loose rock in just the wrong place, tumbling into a narrow crevice hidden by brush. Maybe he became disoriented in the worsening weather, wandered off the trail, and succumbed to exposure far from where search teams looked. Raven Ridge has dense pockets of forest, hidden sinkholes, and steep drop-offs that vanish into the tree line. A fall into one of those places, combined with bad luck and thick vegetation, could easily hide a body for years or forever. In this version, the tree symbols were left by someone else entirely on a different day, unread clues to an unrelated story. The cigarette butts were from careless hikers. The two men in dark clothing were just locals cutting through the woods. Everything ominous is just coincidence. Everything scary is just our pattern-seeking brains trying to assemble chaos into a monster. But even the rangers who favor this explanation struggle with certain details. If it was a simple accident, why was his bright jacket removed and folded? Where is his phone?
And why did the dogs lose his trail in a place with no obvious destination in any direction? The final detail. Months after the formal search ended, the park quietly reopened all sections of the Skyline Loop. The official stance was that there was no ongoing threat to visitors. The unofficial warning, passed quietly between some rangers and volunteer searchers, was simpler. Don't go alone, not up there. One volunteer who requested anonymity told a podcaster about something that happened on the last day of the search. It was near mile marker 7, close to where the jacket had been found. He and another searcher were walking a grid pattern through the trees when they came across a fresh carving on a trunk that hadn't been there the day before. The same circle with 3 lines. But this time, there was something new scratched roughly underneath it, as if done in a hurry. Heard you. The volunteer swears they reported it, but that detail never appeared in any official release. The park declined to comment when asked, saying only that some reported markings were likely hoaxes made after media coverage. Today, hikers still post beautiful photos from Raven Ridge. Sunsets dripping gold over the valley, low clouds hugging the ridgeline, tents glowing softly under the stars. But if you scroll past the pretty pictures and read the comments, you'll find the occasional warning from locals and longtime hikers. Don't leave the trail. Don't ignore that feeling when the forest goes too quiet. Don't hike alone, because somewhere between mile marker 6 and mile marker 7, a careful, experienced hiker in a bright orange jacket vanished. No phone, no body. Just symbols on trees, a folded jacket on a log, and a trail that leads nowhere. So now I'll leave you with 2 questions. What do you think really happened to Daniel Cole on Raven Ridge? And, after hearing this story, would you still dare to hike that mountain alone?